I get asked this question all the time. Great lesson, Chris, but how do I apply this in a musical context? We're learning new stuff all the time. Scales, chords, arpeggios, whatever. The list goes on and on. But how do we actually know if we're going to be able to do this when the time comes, when we're out in the wild in a musical situation? What if there was a magic chord progression that was really well suited to test out any technique or skill? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today we will learn how to play Little Wing all day long. Okay, not all day long, but it turns out the chord progression from Little Wing, Jimi Hendrix's masterpiece, is really well suited as a test bed for skills you already have or think you have, or skills you're developing or working on. Chord knowledge, scale capability, arpeggios, like I said in the top, right? The list goes on and on. Taking any one of these techniques, skills, or ideas or capabilities through that chord progression can be a little bit difficult at first. But after you do it a while, you gain tremendous insight into whether or not the things you do believe you have a handle on actually show up and are actually deployable in a real situation. And anytime you develop a new skill, this chord progression can help you really work it out and really get it up to speed. So I'm going to review the chord progression for Little Wing, explain how it works and why it's so well suited for this. Then I'm going to explain how to actually use it in this way to build and test our own capabilities. Then we'll zoom in, we'll stick it on the fretboard, and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Okay, this is a beautiful chord progression that mixes major and minor chords in the key of G. Now you can also see this in the key of E minor as well. The keys of G major and E minor are relative. In other words, they share the same library of notes and chords, but they're basically the exact same thing. There are a couple of chords in this progression that are not in the key, and I'll get to those in a second. But this chord progression forces us to move in an unusual way. It's not just a 1-4-5 progression, mixing both major and minor, and it's got these chords that aren't in the key. This forces us to stay on our toes and just pay attention and make sure that whatever technique or capability we're using, we can call on in real time. So here's the progression. As you can see in the first few bars, each chord gets a full measure. But when we get to bar 5, those chords are condensed a little bit and they come at 2 per measure. So there's some timing issues there, and this forces us to sort of really pay attention and be able to switch chords twice as fast as we did in the first part of the chord progression. All right, so how do we use this chord progression? We're going to use this as a test bed, or a canvas if you will, to basically take a technique or an idea or a skill or a capability and see if we can evoke it, right? Deploy it in real time through the chord progression. This is going to tell us if we really have the capability we think we do, right? If we can't actually keep it going and make these chord changes in time, then it's a clear sign that we've got a little work to do. Okay, let's zoom in and stick it on the fretboard where it belongs. Here we go. Okay, let's put down the chord progression here just so we can keep track of it. What I'm going to do here is take a few ideas. Maybe it's chords, maybe it's lead stuff, and I'm just going to push it through this chord progression and see if I can evoke and keep my technique or whatever it is, the skill, the capability I'm working on, see if I can keep it together while I target this chord progression as it's going by in real time. This is sort of like a very musical application, but it's not like a 1-4-5 progression. We really got to sort of keep on our toes here. The first thing I'm going to do is just run through this chord progression with open chords just to get it in my head and just to get the chord progression moving. Starting with E minor, to G, A minor, back to E minor. I'm just getting used to it. This B minor is going to have to be a bar chord, down a half step, A minor to C, then G, down to F, C, and up to D. And it starts again, right? So, seems like I've got it in my head. The open chords are working for me. It's in my brain now, right? I've got the idea of the song. I've got the chord progression. I'm getting pretty comfortable with it. Now I'm going to do something else. Maybe I need work on my bar chords. Switching bar chords between major and minor. Maybe I need a hand with that, pushing them around the neck. Let's just put the ones that have the root on the E string here and just try it like that. The first one, I don't have to play a bar chord. I've got this open chord. G, up a whole step to A minor, back down to that E minor chord. Here comes the B minor, down a half step, to A minor, G down to F, C up to D. Right? Keep it going. So if you're having trouble with bar chords, that's also a good way to sort of, put these into a musical context. I'm changing between major or minor. I'm moving and finding all these target notes as they come up, and I'm staying in time. That's the big idea, right? So there's just an example of rhythm. You could do the A string bar chords, you could do triads, you could do all kinds of stuff. Let's switch over to melody for a moment. This chord progression is in the key of G. Like I said, it can also be seen as E minor. Same exact notes. It doesn't really matter which way you look at it. For this example, I'm just going to stay in G major. And here's the skill I'm going to work on. Targeting root notes. I'm just going to target root notes as this chord progression goes along, and I'm going to play through the scale. I'm going to be phrasing through the scale and making sure that I land on those root notes on the downbeat of these chords, right? The tricky part is going to be over here when the chords speed up a little bit, right? I'm going to have to make sure I've got a solution for that. Okay, so here's the G major scale. Starting on this E, here we go. Up to the G. A minor. Back to the E. There's my B, chromatic. A, G, F, C, D. Right? Just targeting those notes. Can I do it? Can I play through that scale and land on these notes as they come by and stay in time, right? This is where we're really getting the benefit of this chord progression being a little unusual and forcing us to pay attention. Okay, so that was the major scale. I'm going to switch over to pentatonic for a moment. The pentatonic scale is the most flexible scale ever. I mean, I don't know if anyone can argue with me about that, but basically, if you just use this rule, play whatever corresponding pentatonic scale fits the chords that are going by, you basically can't go wrong. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to repeat that same exercise, but I'm just going to play a pentatonic scale for each one of these chords. It's going to get tricky down here. I'm going to have to move a little faster. So what I'm going to do here is play the root, phrase into the next scale, play the scale a little bit, phrase into the next scale. So we're going to start with this E. Here we go. E minor pentatonic. Land on the G, G major pentatonic. A minor pentatonic. Back to the E. B, chromatic, A minor, now that last part may have looked tricky. So starting on that G here, we're going G, F, C, D. But all I'm doing really is just playing through the scale. Let me slow it way down. Starting on that G, I'm just playing the pentatonic scale. Then doing the same thing from F. Same thing from C. And then I'm descending the D major pentatonic scale. Gonna do that one again nice and slow. F, C, D. G major pentatonic, F major pentatonic, C major pentatonic, D major pentatonic. All right? Very, very easy thing to think of, but not an easy thing to execute on. So this chord progression keeps me on my toes. Right? Keeps me moving, keeps me guessing, and forces me to actually do the work and put that work in. All right, now I'm just going to grab some triads and just phrase through some triads and see if I can sort of move through some inversions and stay on top of this chord progression as it goes by. going to start with this E minor right here. It's going to be on the D, G, and B string. There's my G, right? A minor. There's my E minor. B minor. Back to the A minor. G, F, E, C, D. All right, a little tricky there at the end. What I did there was just D inversions on that string set. Bending up to that F sharp. So very, very cool, right? This chord progression, again, keeping me on my toes, making sure I can make those decisions on the fly in a really musical situation. Okay, there it is. Using the chord progression from Little Wing to test out or develop new techniques or ones that we think we have mastered is a really, really elegant way of putting these tasks and these things we're learning directly into a musical situation. Now we know we can rely on these things when the time comes. This turns out to be a very, very helpful tool. I've tabbed this lesson out. Those tabs are on my Patreon page. Head on over there if you want to grab them. And if you do decide to support the channel, I thank you in advance. I hope you found this lesson interesting. I hope it's helpful for you. Stay curious, and I'll see you next time.